Today we're going to talk to you about the best prime lenses, particularly Nikon Z mount for event photography, and we're going to try and cover all the bases so that you know exactly what kind of setup to go and get. So I personally choose to shoot Nikon. I've been shooting Nikon for 13 years. It's what I know, it's what I like, it's what I love. So with that in mind, I've brought my own equipment to run through with you guys as well. So I don't just shoot primes, I also do shoot with zoom lenses as well, but prime lenses just give you something that little bit extra special. They're really good in terms of the character of the image, but also the fact that you can get those wide apertures down to f1.8, which on zoom lenses you just can't get. So I'm going to run through all of my favorite things about shooting with prime lenses and then the differences between each focal length, so you guys know which ones you're going to prefer for the type of work you're doing. Aperture for low light is extremely important because it allows you to get as much light down the lens as possible. So with an f1.8 you can also get a lot of bokeh, or as we know, depth of field. That will allow us to create awesome portraits. So the 35 is an excellent choice in terms of getting that nice wide angle effect. So when you're photographing events like weddings or concerts or just anything like that in general, what you want to be sure of is that you're using a lens that allows you to get everything either on the stage in. If you're photographing two people at the same time, you want to make sure you get them both in, so 35mm is a great option. It also kind of gives you more of like a cinematic type of feel to it. I find with, like, for example, the next one we come on to, which is the 50mm, that's a bit more like human eye level, especially on a full frame format. Oh, and another thing as well, Stuart's favorite focal length, he goes on about it all the time. In fact, I think he pretty much sleeps with it in his bed at all times, is the 35mm. So we can both personally vouch for it, isn't that right, Stuart? Yep, it's an awesome, awesome focal length. It's in my bag all the time. I can't be without it. In fact, every job I do, the 35mm is there with me. So now onto the 50mm. Now, it's commonly known as the nifty 50, or at least everybody knows it as that. You can get them in lots of different apertures, but a good one to start out with is an f1.8. It's been a classic in my bag for at least 13 years. I've had one. It was the first pro, shall we say, pro lens that I bought, was a 50mm, again, nifty 50. It's great for everything in terms of portrait work, in terms of even doing product photography, but for event photography, it's absolutely essential. Because a lot of the time when you're working in events, you're not always working with large amounts of space. So you want to be able to go in tight on a subject a little bit more than, say, 35, but not so much compared to, say, an 85 or a 105 or a 135. So the 50 just gives you that nice little bit of extra push as and where you need it. What I find as well is that it's a very versatile, very flexible lens in different types of photography. So regardless of what type of photographer you are, you can make use or find uses for 50mm. It gives you that human eye perspective. So how you see through your eyeballs is how that image is going to come out, or at least close to it, especially if you're using a full frame. You do get a little bit more if you're using an APS-C or something smaller, but a 50mm 1.8 is absolutely essential. I can't recommend it enough. And in terms of how many we actually sell, it's probably one of the better ones in terms of Nikon Z as well. You may notice as well on the Nikon Z one, it's actually noticeably bigger than its predecessor G version or the D version. That's mainly because, one, there's more glass elements in it to make it sharper. It's also to keep it consistent with things like the 35mm and the 50mm being the same size. Same with the 85. There's a consistency in size there, which is really, really useful. I would say that buying a 50mm is an absolute no-brainer, and it's never a dumb decision. So when it comes to human eye perspective, the 35, 50 and the 85 are the closest to what we actually see, or how we see in terms of our own focal length. 85 just gives you a little bit more, so that's our next great option. So the 85 is my absolute favorite prime lens out of all of the options. I've owned one for at least 10 years. I started out on a different brand than Nikon, sorry Nikon about that. But all of my absolute best pictures have been taken on this lens. And I know a lot of other photographers that say the same thing. It just gives you a little bit of compression on the telephoto end, but it also keeps you down at that f1.8 with that nice depth of field as well. And it's also not too big to carry around, especially at 1.8. Again, it's similar to these other lenses here, but it just gives you something that's totally different to the other two lenses. It just creates that, again, that nice compression. It makes things look softer and it makes things pin sharp. I don't think I've ever taken an image on this lens that's out of focus. So with a longer prime lens, like an 85mm or something equivalent to that, what you get is that background compression, which means you get more depth of field at f1.8 in comparison to something like a 50mm or a 35 or anything wider than that. And again, if you go higher up in that number, up to 105, 135, you get more compression again. So it very much comes down to personal preference. The 85 is the perfect sweet spot between the two because it gives you a nice frame, but it also gives you all that lovely, nice bokeh that we're all fond of. So here's one you may not have thought about, and it's not one that a lot of photographers will actually buy, but it's a really good consideration and a good option. I actually like using the Nikon Z20mm 1.8, and you're probably wondering why. That's way too wide to shoot people and make them look natural. It's for those fill-in shots. So when you're shooting, say, a band on a stage, or if you're shooting a wide group at a wedding, for example, this actually gives you a real nice focal length, but you're able to pull back at f1.8 if you want to try and apply some bokeh or, again, depth of field. It's also a nice versatile lens if you like doing landscapes and astrophotography as well. That does help. They're particularly built for that kind of reason. But I like to try and apply sort of unusual prime lenses into any situations. So the 20mm just gives you a lot of width. But again, if you want to keep something in the foreground and blow everything out, you've got that option, or vice versa. It's a nice lens to try and a nice one to play with. The 24mm is also a preference for a lot of people as well, but the 20mm just gives you a little bit more. So it's really worth considering something like this. If you think in terms of zoom lenses though, 24 to 70, 70 to 200 tend to be the kind of go-to, but if you go a little bit wider, it's a really good choice. So definitely try it out, especially if you're a wedding photographer and you're doing the interior shots of the venue or the exterior shots and you want to keep it on a prime lens, 20mm is a really good choice, so I would go with that. So if you like what you saw today on this video, by all means check out the rest of our videos on our channel. Please like and subscribe. If you haven't already, you're probably gone by now, but please share it with all your friends. We'd be really grateful.